As we've been hearing, Surrey Police have released a transcript of an interview with the broadcaster Jimmy Savile. It was conducted in Savile's own office at Stoke Mandeville Hospital in 2009 when he was 83 years old. In this, he repeatedly denies claims of sexual abuse and said they came from people who, in his words, were looking for a few quid or a story for the paper. Alan Collins is a solicitor at the firm of Panone, which represents 60 victims of Savile. I asked Alan Collins what he thinks the newly released transcript tells us.
It's sadly a missed opportunity because the interview, in my opinion, was Savile-led and not police-led. It was an opportunity for the police really to challenge Savile over these allegations. And given what we know and what the police should have appreciated at the time...
I mean, this at the time was October 2009. Are you saying they had more information?
Yeah, I think there's enough now in the public domain to enable us to say the dots weren't joined up, because we have to remember that Savile came onto the police's radar way back in the 1960s. And so this wasn't really something new, and I think we've got two issues. Number one, the failure of the police to join up the dots, because had they joined up the dots they would have realised that there were several sets of allegations in relation to Savile, and he needed to be interviewed and challenged about those allegations. And then secondly, the fact is the way this particular interview was conducted, Savile was interviewed apparently at his office at Stoke Mandeville Hospital. That's extraordinary in its own right. And he was able to manipulate the interview.
But then he wasn't a suspect, was he? I mean, he was somebody who was out there in public, and the police will quite often come to you. They don't necessarily require you to go to them.
Well, that is true, but given the nature of the allegation and the general circumstances, I have to say this wasn't just really, witnessing a crime. This was someone who was being accused of a very serious crime, and so the whole setup strikes me as odd, and really it should not have justified him being able to dictate the pace, as it were, by saying, I'm going to be interviewed at my office at Stoke Mandeville Hospital. And even if we say, for argument's sake, accept it was okay to interview him there, the meat is in the substance of the actual interview itself. The fact that Savile was not really challenged about his denials, about what he had to say as regards the allegation. A serious allegation was made.
A serious allegation of sexual touching and
right.
forced oral sex. Yes.
Yeah, of a young, vulnerable person. And to get away with saying, oh, well, people are after my money and I'm famous and so on and I have friends in high places, well, if Savile was going to take that line, he should have been challenged about that, because it was totally irrelevant. And that was just Savile throwing his weight around, as he had always done.
We know with retrospect, that was just Savile. This is the way that he treated these people. Charges throughout the years.
That's right. He was a bully. He was able to inveigle situations and which enabled him to abuse young people, vulnerable people. He would effectively bully people, and that's how he got his way and got away with serious offences year after year, decade after decade. And so this was just Savile being able to manipulate the situation once again to his own ends.
When he could have asked for a lawyer, he didn't. That showed great confidence, didn't it? Because would most people in those circumstances have wanted to have a lawyer present?
Can't say every case is different, but it ties in with Savile's state of mind, the way he viewed himself, the way he viewed his victims. He saw himself apart. He saw himself as someone who was virtually untouchable. And remember, through his life, he'd gone through accumulating very powerful acquaintances and friends, as he saw it. And that was just Savile being his usual confident self.
We know now that the Home Secretary has extended the inquiry, and he's looking at 10 other hospital trusts other than Broadmoor and Stoke Mandeville and Leeds. Does that in itself suggest to you that there is even more to be discovered about this extraordinary and complicated and dreadful man?
Sadly, I suspect yes. From what I know from listening to victims and witnesses, Savile used whatever opportunity came his way to serve his own selfish ends, and that was to abuse young and vulnerable people. He used his charity work as a very effective way of gaining access to vulnerable people, schools, hospitals and so on. So it's not at all surprising if over his 50 years of offending that he would have committed offences in a wide variety of situations and places.
And does it help your clients, Mr. Collins, that these things keep on coming out, layer upon layer?
Yes and no. It's a constant reminder which is very painful. It stokes up very painful memories. But at the same time, I think the victims want to know the truth. They need to understand how Savile was able to get away with his offending year in, year out, decade after decade, and who knew what he was getting up to.
Alan Collins, who represents 60 of Jimmy Savile's victims.